Why is the Joker Batman's greatest rival, yet a seemingly rather frail individual able to cause so much chaos in a city like Gotham? How is it that a character like the Hulk, a raging maniac who is seemingly out of control, make us pose the question, how does a chaotic character do good? And finally, why does Thanos, one of the greatest villains of all time, who is convinced he is righteous and is in control, able to cause so much chaos in the universe? In this video, we're going to dissect and go deep into what chaos theory is and how we can apply it in the confines of these three characters. So, where do we start? Well, let's start here. I used to work at a fast food restaurant called Chick-fil-A, and there was a delicate balance between what could be considered a bad day and a good day. During my time there, I mostly worked with the same people under the same conditions at the same time. There were some days when I worked that the team was a well-oiled machine and everything went smoothly. And there were other days where we would just crumble under the pressure, fall behind on orders, yell at each other, and miscommunicate often. And it always struck me as odd that even though it was the same people under the same conditions at the same time, that we couldn't recreate the level of productivity on the good days as we could on the bad ones. In other words, the question I asked myself is, why were some days chaotic and others not? Well, here's why. Let me introduce to you the butterfly effect, an idea founded by a guy named Edward Lorenz. He was a meteorologist and mathematician from Dartmouth College. He is the first person to create what I would consider a philosophical take on what is known as chaos theory, known as the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect can be defined as follows. The variables that govern the initial conditions of weather have such incredible sensitivity to those initial conditions that a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil can set off a tornado in Texas in due time. In other words, the sensitivity of the atoms around us is potentially so sensitive that me wiggling my pinky like this could set off a monsoon on the other side of the world. Now, the scientific validity of this particular theory is really hard to prove, but in an abstract and philosophical sense, it changed the way that I understood chaos. And here's why. Let's go back to that Chick-fil-A example. The difference between the chaotic and the smooth days that I worked had a lot to do with my initial state of being. In other words, the initial conditions coming into work that day. In other words, if I was late or frantic or unorganized, chaotic, this would affect how I would come into work and therefore affect the state of everyone around me. Now, don't get me wrong. It wasn't just about me. A lot of it has to do with how everyone around me was doing mentally and emotionally. If enough people were mentally or emotionally frantic or unorganized, our chaotic states would just bounce off each other. But if enough people were mentally and emotionally in control, it could keep those that were out of control level-headed, including myself. You see, I used to think that being chaotic was about how random and loud and evil one has to be. But over time, I began to realize that there's something that is incomplete about this idea. Let's take Thanos, for example. Thanos is a person who, if you watch the Marvel movies, is rather in control. He's very cunning, he's conniving and calculating. Yet how is it that he is able to create so much chaos? What about the Hulk, who is the most crazy and the most out of control of everybody I've mentioned in this video, yet he does a lot of good, but he just exudes chaos? What about the Joker, who is all those things that I had initially described? Kind of loud, pretty chaotic, and just plain evil. Thus, it begs an idea that perhaps chaos isn't inherently evil. Therefore, it must be something else. Chaos can be used for good, as the Hulk portrays, just as it can be used for evil, as we see in the Joker or Thanos. But before I dissect the concept of chaos, we first have to understand the concept of control. Control is about order and discipline and routine, whereas chaos is about spontaneity, randomness, and surprise. However, by their nature, they cannot adhere to the same rules. Yet they need each other to exist. For example, in a society, we can only maintain control by keeping order in as many entities that run society as possible. It's about having a grip and an influence in as much as you can control as possible. In other words, control is a very wide and general, broad force that brings about order as far as a ruler is willing to take it. But it's in the deviancy from that control and from that order that brings about chaos. You see, there is a stress in trying to maintain control in society and even within ourselves. For example, have you ever tried to take control of a classroom full of kindergartners? Or try and hold down your emotions when you're feeling really angry? Have you ever tried to keep your team in order working in a fast food restaurant during rush hour? You see, by its nature, control requires some basis of chaos to function. Otherwise, without chaos, what is the purpose of control? In other words, without chaos, there is nothing to control. And quite frankly, it doesn't take a lot of chaos for chaos to be effective. Think about how much a simple fender bender on a freeway can cause hour-long traffic delays. Just being 1 minute quicker to get in the shower over everyone in your house can be the difference between getting to work early and being 20 minutes behind. Therefore, it makes me wonder, could chaos be this precise, calculating, subtle force that only requires a sensitive touch to be effective? In other words, is it possible that to be chaotic doesn't actually take a lot of effort? It just takes the right effort in the right time and in the right way. Thus, my take on chaos is that chaos is precise. You don't have to go outside and start screeching like a banshee to be effectively chaotic. You could, however, maybe spill some tea to a group of friends and watch as that spirals out of control. While they both exude chaos, one is just more potent and takes a little bit longer to be effective. Nonetheless, what does this have to do with the Joker and the Hulk and Thanos? Why is the Joker able to cause so much chaos in the city of Gotham? Because secretly, the Joker is a man of control. No one can plan and execute and follow through on the big things he does in The Dark Knight. Batman is the one frantically trying to catch the Joker, while the Joker enjoys his time escaping his clutches. The Joker sows the seeds of chaos like a spider making a web with precision. He plants bombs to divert Gotham City forces. He plays immoral and unethical games with people's lives. He is convincing in how he persuades people to become agents of chaos. He threatens and follows through on blowing up hospitals just for the sake of it, but he does so with a plan, and that plan just happens to be what no one else around him can control. And sometimes, not even himself. He just knows to expect the unexpected. Well, what about the Hulk? How does one who is out of control and exude chaos still happen to do good? Well, remember, he wasn't always that way. But with the work of Bruce Banner, he was able to refine the Hulk's capacity for grace and goodness. Of course, not without error. Chaotic good requires much refinement, and if you follow along the Marvel movies, you will find that development in his character. How does somebody who is calculating and have a calm demeanor like Thanos create chaos? Well, like the Joker, he is pretty violent, which in its nature is chaotic. But more so, unlike the Joker who wants to see the world burn for his enjoyment, Thanos is quite literally convinced he is righteous and that he is saving the universe. And he thinks that everyone else is wrong. As he says in Infinity Wars, he wants to watch the sun set on a grateful universe. But it's how he goes about doing that that is misguided. He kills half a planet's citizens so that there's plenty of resources to go around, and he calls it salvation. But to the sane eye, that is evil and chaotic. Nonetheless, there are plenty of good, chaotic, good characters that we could look at, like Sirius Black from Harry Potter, Robin Hood, the Green Arrow from the DC universe, Star-Lord from the Marvel universe, and many others. But when we look at characters like the Joker and Thanos and the Hulk, they aren't chaotic in that you don't know what they would do, but rather they are chaotic in that you wouldn't be able to predict how they would go about doing it. Either way, the final question you should ask is this: if you wanted to be chaotic, how would you go about doing it? For starters, you can't resemble the Hulk, that's for sure, and I certainly hope you don't wind up like Thanos or the Joker, but to be a chaotic person, paradoxically, you would have to be a person who is in control of themselves, who is calculating and subtle. For chaos is something you are imposing on others, not trying to be. You are not the chaotic one. You are simply the one who sets the demands on how the chaos unfolds. Chaos isn't about walking outside and screeching for as long and as loudly as you possibly can. It's about how you make things happen and how you allow things to happen. That's what the Joker did. That's what Thanos did. They just happened to be forces of evil. As for how you use it, well, that's up to you. I certainly hope you use it to make people's lives better. After all, nobody said chaos had to be bad. Jordan Peterson once said, "Order is not enough. You can't just be stable and secure and unchanging, because there are still vital new things to be learned." Just as control is needed for order, stability, and strength, chaos is needed for creativity, learning, and spontaneity. Now, if you like what you saw today, make sure you like, comment, and hit that subscribe button so you can learn all the ways to develop a philosophy for a better life. When you subscribe to Better Happens Daily, you are saying to yourself, life can only get better from here. Remember, chaos is not a force of good or evil, but a force you can utilize at your own discretion. I do ask, in hopes for a better future, that you use it as a force for good and light. Now may God bless you, and get out there and make better happen daily.